Thank you, Maria. Earlier today, one local museum held a celebration honoring Indigenous cultures in the area. Western Mass News reporter Glenn Kittle brings us the details of the event.
Representatives of Indigenous people gathered at the Wistariahurst Museum in Holyoke, not only to share their artwork and culture, but to bring awareness to issues facing Indigenous people today.
This show is a culmination of the hard work of a lot of people involved in the community, within the Native community and outside, to support Native voices during Native American Heritage Month this month.
Nyana LaFond is an artist who paints missing or murdered Indigenous people. She tells Western Mass News Indigenous women are 11 times more likely to be murdered or go missing.
I'm trying to represent them as human, to show everyone who sees them that these are no different than their own mothers and sisters and brothers and cousins, and that all of us are humans and deserve safety.
LaFond hopes her work can raise awareness for an issue she says is ignored in the U.S.
98% of Indigenous people experience violence in their lifetime. It's extremely overlooked, especially on the East Coast where we live.
Some of the artwork sold at the event will donate the proceeds to programs that support Native American communities. Their hope is to start a conversation that helps people have a greater understanding of Native Americans.
Kinship, relationship, reciprocity, and respect. And those are the foundations for Indigenous cultures up to today. So that is a culture of welcoming, a culture of sharing, a culture of mutual benefit, a culture of going forward into the future in a good way.
Reporting in Holyoke, Glenn Kittle, Western Mass News.